Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first episode of Olympicast of 2018. I'm Paramedic293 and it is April 1st, and despite the timing, I can assure you this is not an April Fool's joke. I've been building up to this for quite a while. Ladies and gentlemen, today I am going to bring you the exclusive worldwide reveal of the 2018 Tobog Olympics and the changes that will be occurring this year to make the Olympics a more enjoyable experience for everyone all round. So, before we get into the specifics, I just want to go over a few things to address people's worries going into these Olympics. Now, I'm not stupid and I'm not foolish. I recognise that last year's Olympics were bloated, there were far too many events, and the fatigue had set in something fierce by the end. I'm aware of that, I was feeling it myself. My biggest objective this year is to not make the Olympics bigger, but to make them more enjoyable and less grating overall, so that the experience overall is more smooth and more interesting, and bringing back the Olympics to the core of what makes them work. I don't think they were a bad Olympics 2017, but they just went on too long, too many events, and that is really something I'm aiming to sort out this time. So before we continue on to the next part, just to let you know, the full event roster, or the provisional event roster, will be going live today if it hasn't gone live already, and you can go and peruse that later on. Alright, so without further ado, let's get straight into this with the first major change that's going to be coming from these Olympics, and it's one that I'm sure most of you will understand from before. This time, we're not using the country system. For those of you who played in the OMG games this January, you'll be fully aware of the system we're about to use. We'll be using the team system. Now, this is a system that isn't all too dissimilar from the country system, but the key thing here is that the teams are balanced, so that all three teams have an equal amount of skill and players on them. So there's no single solo rep countries like last year, or extremely overpowered countries like the USA. This is going to be three teams. They're not going to be Zat, Discord, and Chitango, because this year you're going to get to choose your team's identity. Later in the month, I'm going to be revealing the team captains for each team, and then the other four members of the team. There'll be 5 players on each team, balanced to make sure every single team's got a good shot and equal amount of golds across all different platforms. When this time comes around, the team captains must confer with their teams, and they'll have to choose the identity for their team, specifically a logo and a name. Now, there will be restrictions placed on what you can create with those, but you're going to have a fair amount of freedom to be able to pull those off. Now, what we're seeking to do with the team system is add another layer of complexity to the Olympics. I strongly want to point out that, as is always the case, individual success is always the priority. My major worry about the team system, and before I go on, the team system is fantastic. I can see people really getting into it in the OMG games, and it works really well. But there are situations and certain events where the team system works against the quality of the event, where we have free-for-all situations where, you know, you'll get team members. I can understand why they do this. They'll team up on whoever isn't on their team and make it almost impossible for that person to win. I don't like that, because, you know, it's not against the rules, but it's also at the same time it's very unfair on that person that they're not going to win basically because they're not on the same team as the other person. It's not their skill that's forcing them to lose, it's the fact that they're not on the correct team, and that bothers me. So please guys, please always aim for individual success above all else. And if you win for your team, cheer on for your team, always try and help your team, but do always prioritize individual success. Now, I will get around to this later in April or maybe early May, revealing the team rosters, and then you'll have a little bit to form your team identity and get them back to me. That's going to be one of the biggest changes come the Olympics this year. So no more country system. We're having a team system, 5 players per team, and it'll be balanced using the tier system I used in the OMG and BC games. So there's an equal amount of skill on each team. The second major change that I'm going for this year doesn't affect the event so much, but it really builds towards the atmosphere and the principles of the Olympics altogether. I don't really have a name for going this. I call it player identities. Now, what we're going to do this year, this is very much inspired by the Overwatch League, which I've been watching a lot of. Basically, every player is going to pick an identity for the Olympics. Now, this will involve picking 2 colours, a number, a victory video, which will replace national anthems. We'll go into detail on that in a bit, and a avatar. Now, the avatar is simply a pic, like, you know, it's like we have on Discord. It's your picture. Like, Jack will probably pick Pichu, I'll probably pick Tiny Snack. That'll be your avatar. Now, I'll just go on to a bit how these are going to be used on a bit later on, but as for the identities, this is an identity that will carry with you throughout the entirety of the games. And they will be used on the leaderboards, personalized profiles, which again I'll go into later, and all sorts of other things. They're going to be your... That's going to be you during the Olympics. That identity will follow you around, and the sign-up for those, for sorting out your identities and like picking your colours and everything will go live very soon, so do keep an eye out for that. Now moving on to an albeit brief one, but also something I mentioned earlier, victory videos. Now, it's an obvious thing that national anthems aren't going to be around anymore. Now, the idea behind them was sound, but obviously no one really ever listened to them. No one paid interest to them because they knew what they were after the first couple of times, you know, it wasn't particularly interesting. The idea is sound, however. So what I'm doing this time with the replacement of the country system is every single player is going to have their own unique victory video that they're going to post to me before the start of the Olympics. If you don't post one to me, I'm just going to use your national anthem as standard. I'm not going to bother fucking around with that. If you want a victory video, you give it to me. I will save it and I will post it every time you win gold medal. The video can be pretty much anything you want. It could be a song, it can be a quote, or it could be just, you know, whatever it is, as long as it's... Well, actually, no, you know, pick whatever the fuck you want. I don't really care. This is going to be the video that's displayed on Tobogcast when you win a gold medal. That is fully up to you. That's your choice, and it's going to also help to form a bit more of your personal identity. Think of it like the victory video in Board Game Online. You know, when you set it yourself, when you just plays whenever it ends, people have to watch it. So that's the sort of thing that's going to happen. Now, you aren't locked into your victory video throughout the whole of the Olympics. You're going to have a chance to change the video at the end of every wave. So at maximum you could have 6 different victory videos throughout the games. If you really wanted to, you can keep it going. Unless you tell me, I won't change it. Of course, I'll remind you that you can change it close to the time. So start thinking up about what videos you might like to introduce. Now, moving on from that, I said a few things that I'll talk about later. So the player identities are going to be used in something that's going to be fairly cosmetic change for these Olympics, but it's also going to provide a bit of extra depth of layer to the pageantry and the principle behind it. On the site, which I know not many of you use anymore, hopefully this will give you more of an excuse to use it, we're going to add a new tab for the Olympics. This is going to include detailed information about each event, about the players, about the teams, details about the history behind them, and all sorts of other things. Now, let me stress something very clearly. Olympicast on the Discord is still going to be your #1 stop shop for finding out any details you need to know about the Olympics. And of course, if you need anything to know anything, just ask me. But the site is going to provide a sort of Wikipedia of the Olympics, if you will. It will let you know the past events at a glance. It will let you know who's got what medals. It will let you know the records. It will basically be an archive of information that allows you to follow and see what's been going on. And there's also going to be stylized profile pages for each player. Like, for example, that's where the colors and the avatars and all that come into play properly. You'll be able to see your own profile, which will be updated as you earn medals. You'll be able to compare yourself to other players over time and see how you're ranking up against them. And in general, it's just going to add another layer of sort of, you know, identity to each player, to the teams, and allow you to just, you know, find out what's going on a bit more and add a little bit more competitiveness to the games. And I'm quite looking forward to getting started on that. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty of what's going to make this a more pleasurable experience overall. Now, we can talk about player identities and the Olympic site tab all day long, but these are mostly cosmetic changes, mostly not affecting the actual format or anything. What I'm about to talk about is what's going to hopefully make the Olympics a more enjoyable, more smoother experience for everyone involved. Basically put, at its core, we're losing 15 events in total. That doesn't mean we're losing 15 events from last year. In fact, we're losing roughly about 20 events, 22 events from last year. I've been very brutal with the cuts to last year's event roster. Like I said earlier, it was bloated, there were far too many, and it was grating by the end. I've cut out a lot of events. There's even entire games from the roster, and I've kept it at its core what I see to be the heart and soul of competitive Tobog. I don't know the exact amount of events we're going to have overall. We're looking at roughly 35. It won't be much higher than that. Absolute maximum would be 40, but if I'm being honest, I can't really see it being that much. Now, that may not seem like a massive change in of itself, but combined together with other changes I'm introducing, it should make the Olympics a bit less fatigue heavy. One of the major things I want to introduce this year is the concept of event stacks. Now, this is also something that I introduced during the OMG and BC Games. The idea basically being that you have multiple events on one night. Now, what I tried to do last year was give every single event its own day, its own time slot, so that they could be appreciated in its entirety. It's a sound idea, but it just doesn't work in principle because it just wears people out. You know, if they have an event every Saturday, every Sunday, every Wednesday, it gets really grating. That's something I'm eager to avoid this time. Now, there's going to be roughly 6 events per wave. Now, put it like this. You're going to have about 6 events per wave, and if you think about, if there were 3 event stacks of 2, that's 3 days in a 2-week period where we've got Olympics, and that's it. That's all. There is worth pointing out that not every event is going to be stacked. The most important events, I've identified 12 events during the Olympics. These are the most important ones. I call them marquee events, which is sort of an idea I sort of toyed with last year. These are going to be given their own days, because they're the most important ones. I don't want anything distracting from them. I want them to be big, I want them to be huge, and I want them to be the ones that get their own times. Everything else is likely to be stacked together in doubles. In a very rare occasion, I might triple events, but I don't know if I'll do that, because it's a bit too much, really. It's just too much. I won't ever really try to stack 2 events together that are going to be more than 2 hours combined. Most events, on average, are between 30 to 40 minutes. Some are less than 20, some go on beyond an hour. They're quite rare. I will never, ever do a day where I expect more than 2 hours of Olympic commitment at once. I would never try and do that. Obviously, it's not always under my control. We could have an event that goes on way longer than we expected. For example, the Checkers event earlier this year went on for over 2 hours. No one could have predicted that, when in the past it had been going on for like 15 minutes. Some things like that I can't control, but where I can, I will always try and make sure that we never have more than 2 hours of Olympic events per day. Each wave is going to be 2 weeks long. I'm going to aim to be 2 weeks long, which means you've only got like 3 or 4 days of Olympic action in 2 weeks. That's it. You think about the amount of spare time you're going to have in between, which hopefully means you're going to have a lot of spare time and you won't be too fatigued like you were last year. Yeah, that's basically it. If anyone else has any suggestions about how we can optimize our time, our use of time during the Olympics, that would be very much appreciated. Of course, we have to remember the D&D campaign will be running alongside, so I want a lot of free time open for those guys. I don't want to have to compete with them. I think we can get a good balance between the two, but my main focus is making sure that we're not fatigued and we don't get worn out too easily. And hopefully with the combination of the smaller event roster and the event stacking method, that shouldn't be too much of a problem. So one last thing to talk about, fairly minor. Olympicast is returning. We've had Tobogcast going throughout the whole of the off-season, but this time it's going to be Olympicast 2.0. Now, I actually had big plans for Olympicast last year that, for one reason or another, just didn't pan out, mostly because I just wasn't putting in the right amount of effort I should be. Now, rest assured that it's the usual thing of just posting news and hype and whatever is going to be the same, but the main focus that I want to do on improving Olympicast is in the videos. Now, last year my plan had actually been a video every week to talk about the events that had happened and have a preview of the events that are coming. I'm not going to be so naive this time. At the end of every wave, we're going to have an event that reviews what happened in that wave and has a look forward to the rest of the wave. These won't be live streamed. They're going to be pre-made, and they wouldn't be any longer than about 15 minutes, I don't think. Now, the biggest change, however, is I won't be doing these alone. every single time I'm going to invite a guest on to come and speak with me. Now, that guest could be anyone. It could be someone who's done pretty well in that wave. It could be, it could be literally anyone who feels like it. Towboy, Sly, MT, whoever the hell feels like coming on and talking. When it gets to the time, I will come and ask someone and say, do you want to come and talk with me? And we'll talk about it together. And that should hopefully make the videos a bit more interesting. This is going to serve much the same function it was originally meant to serve, which is that it sort of acts as like a talk show to sort of like discuss what's been going on, what's coming up, and, just generate a bit more hype and interest in the games. So, there you have it. They are the major changes that are coming to the 2018 Tobog Olympics this year. And hopefully, with all of these things combined, we're looking at a tighter, better focused, more interesting, and more importantly, more engaging Olympics. One that isn't going to grate on people, isn't going to outsay its welcome, and hopefully just is closer to the 2016 experience, where it was just like a bit of a revelation, and it was just like, it was great, it was just fantastic. I still maintain 2017 Olympics were great in a large number of ways, but I really, really overdid it. I went too far. I just bloated it, and I wasn't thinking about what people wanted. I was thinking about what I wanted. I fully own that. Hopefully this year I'll be able to work on that and make it a bit better. So as a quick recap before I head off about what we got the team system instead of the country system, meaning that they're going to have a balanced system that's going on besides the individual medal table. Players can now pick their own victory videos instead of national anthems, which can be whatever they want. There's going to be a smaller event roster. We're looking at roughly 35 events, maybe 38, 36, depending on what happens in the remainder of the off-season. We're going to be looking at event stacks this time, so a lot of events are going to happen on top of each other, 1 or 2 events at a time, maybe 3, while marquee events, the 12 events that I've identified as the biggest, are going to get their own time slots. Olympicast will be returning with new talk shows at the end of every wave discussing what happened, as well as looking ahead, with guest stars coming on to help me talk about it. Player identities are going to be added, which are going to allow you to pick a number, avatar, 2 colours, and of course the aforementioned victory video, which is going to allow you guys to have like a personal identity that you can carry with you throughout the Olympics. And that identity will carry through to a new site, to a new tab on the site, which will have detailed breakdowns of the events, the players, the teams, records, head-to-heads, all that sort of thing. It will act as a sort of hub for the Olympics, even though all the information you need is going to keep going through to Olympicast, and that you'll be able to follow and keep up with. And that is pretty much it. So you need to look out for the provisional event roster, which will be going up tonight, very soon, if not already. I don't know. It's not. It's the past to me. It's not actually April 1st yet. So yes, that will be going up soon. I would strongly encourage you to check it. And if you really, really want an event to be in there that's not there, get in contact with me ASAP. It is not my responsibility now to sort out any new events to be added. That is your responsibility. You have had an entire half a year to get in contact with me and say, okay, I think this event should be in the Olympics. Let's set an up event. If we haven't done it by now, it's not my fault. It's your fault. Get in contact with me over the course of April as quickly as possible and convince me why this event of yours should be in the Olympics. If you don't, nothing's going to happen. I'm not, of course, as I've said time and time again, I'm not organising any events this month. There might be a few spontaneous sort of sessions to help people practice, but this is a month of rest. I want people recharging their batteries and ready to go in May. The team roster thing will probably be in May, so I wouldn't worry about that too much now. But the player identities thing, that's going to come up later in this week, if not tomorrow or today. I don't know, it depends on how I feel like at the time. This is where you're going to be able to pick your colours, your avatar, your numbers, and I'll set up some basic profile pages for all of you. The details of what you can pick and how you pick it will be on that thread, so look out for that. Until then, I'm going to strongly suggest you guys get some practice in. You've got 1 month to go, well, maybe 1.5 months until the start of the games. And then from that point on, besides the July break, you've got about 3 months of Olympic action to look forward to. Get some practice in. Get in, play some OMG, play some tabletop, play some GTA or Overwatch, play golf with your friends, whatever. Just get in some practice and just do the best you can. take a look at the event roster, find out what you're weakest at, work on it. Look at the event roster, find out the ones you're strong at, work on them. Just do whatever you have to do to get yourself better off. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask me. And I will see you on May 18th for the launch of the 2018 Toboggan Olympics. Until then, I've been Paramedic293. Thank you for tuning in to this year's first episode of Olympicast, and I will see you very soon.